You know, on this show, I've been asking a lot of questions.
Now here is a question for you. Remember the answer will start with a Q.
And the trouble is, the answers to my questions don't start with a Q. I'm asking, why didn't Sesame Street have many prominent female characters? But I'm also asking, why did some female characters work and some didn't? And that means I also have to ask, why are female characters excluded from so much of television? And I guess also, why are women and girls discriminated against in culture as a whole? It's kind of exhausting, and I wish I could just be like Grover and answer a cow and call it a day.
Oh, okay, come on, cow. Let's go home.
But you know, I really want to ask these questions, and I have to start somewhere. And as Sesame Street told me, asking questions is a good way to figure things out. So let's start with, why did some female characters work and some didn't? Because today we're discussing Prairie Dawn, arguably the most successful female character in the early days of Sesame. Prairie is the only female character who has consistently appeared on the show for over 50 years, debuting in 1971 and still appearing in new episodes today. So what made Prairie work as a female character, or more importantly, as a character at all, when her doppelganger Betty Lou feels so abstract all the time? There was one person who I thought I should ask, and that's Stephanie D'Abruzzo. Stephanie is a longtime performer with the Muppets, joining Sesame Street in the early 90s. That's not to mention her work on countless other projects, including, but not limited to, Sesame Workshop's Helpsters, Henson's Wubulous World of Dr. Seuss, Fred Rogers Productions' Don Quixote, and Broadway darling Avenue Q. Basically, Stephanie has spent a lot of time helping develop female characters, in addition to playing Prairie Dawn herself since 2015. So this week, I sat down with Stephanie to discuss this question. And a whole lot more, honestly. I won't waste any more of your time getting ready. I'm Becca Petunia, and let's get some questions answered this week on a Prairie Dawn Companion.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Starlight Hotel takes great pride in presenting the world's favorite 6-year-old entertainer, Miss Prairie Dawn. Come on, girls. Let's go do girl stuff. Yeah, girl stuff.
Can you play a song with a beat?
All right, so like I said, my guest today is Stephanie D'Abruzzo. Stephanie D'Abruzzo is, of course, a puppeteer who has worked with the Muppets for a long time at this point, and as well as an actress and so many different things. Stephanie, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Well, you kind of said a lot of it. Hi, I'm Stephanie D'Abruzzo. I'm a multifaceted performer. I perform on stage with and without puppets, and on little screens with and without puppets, and on a big screen only with puppets so far, and voiceovers and singing and writing, and I've been a multi-hyphenate since 1993. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, you were one of the people that I was most excited to talk to
Aw.
because obviously I'm a big fan of your work
Oh,
with the
thank you.
Muppets and without the Muppets.
Thank you.
But you also are just someone who is so knowledgeable and so interested in just having kind of like the kinds of deep conversations that I was really hoping we could have. So you were very high on my list of guests I
Aw,
wanted to talk to. So,
thank you. That's a very nice way to say opinionated.
you know, I was really trying. I was really trying.
It's very graceful. I appreciate that.
But Stephanie, for anyone in the audience who doesn't know, and I guess I'll have already introduced this beforehand. I didn't record my little pre-interview introduction, but you have been with Sesame Street since the 90s, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, my very first day was as a background puppeteer on the 25th anniversary home video. We shot that in June of 1993, and my very first day on Sesame Street was November of 1993. So it's been a good long time.
And over the years, you've helped develop some female characters with the show.
Hmm.
You've introduced some characters who, boy, since I'm going chronologically through things, we're not going to get to a full episode about Elizabeth or Curly Bear or Lulu
Right,
until a little later. But you introduced those characters,
I did.
and you've also, since 2015, if I recall correctly,
Yes.
you have been the second Prairie Dawn, taking
Yes.
over after former guest of this podcast, Fran Brill,
The
retired.
great Fran Brill, yes.
Oh yes. So you have a really unique perspective on like what makes female characters work. And one thing that I always
Well,
really
considering that I have some dead characters, I wouldn't necessarily say Lulu, Elizabeth, Curly Bear, they're all dead. I don't know if what makes them work. But
boy,
I'm sorry to
I
interrupt
keep
you. I'm
trying
just,
to I keep trying to hype you up and
no,
be
no.
polite.
Oh, I'm the first person to, tell it like it is. But please continue your thought. I apologize for interrupting.
Well, I was just gonna say, and making characters funny and enjoyable to watch is definitely something that I think you're good at.
I appreciate
And what we're it's don't worry, it's not just gonna be the Becca compliments Stephanie DeBruzzo podcast. Although I don't know, maybe that's what you
that.
want.
I
But
mean, I'm not complaining, but then I wonder what you're trying to sell me at the end. Is it Amway or is it supplements
well,
or
I actually have
gold
a
or
I actually have a timeshare.
oh God, yeah.
But But one of the things we've been looking at on the show so far is the many sort of like I'd say attempts, and I'm doing finger quotes that you can't see.
Uh-huh.
But I'd say many attempts at sort of like making a female Sesame Street Muppet.
Hmm.
And in season one, there was Betty Lou, who we did a whole episode about how she isn't really a character. She's basically just a utility puppet with,
Was it really Betty Lou per se though?
well,
Like
that's the interesting thing. She is called Betty Lou in season one. She
really?
is called Betty Lou in season one.
But who's voicing? Like who's
It is
puppeteering her? Who's
almost,
voicing her? Is it Frank
it
doing
is
his little girl?
almost always Frank doing that little girl
Yeah,
proto
that's basically Piggy. Right,
Miss
right, right.
Piggy voice. Yeah.
This a TV studio? Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah. Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
It is almost always that. There are some distinct character traits if you want to force it and think too much about it, which is what I've been doing.
So she's
Um,
Betty Lou, but she has the braids
she
and it's
has
a
the
little pink?
it's the little pink with the braids, and it's the same yarn braids,
Right, right, right.
to
Okay.
distinct from like Prairie
Yeah,
has
yeah,
like
yeah.
realistic hair or
Right, right, right.
more
Right. Huh.
realistic hair.
Huh.
And so but there's not much in the way of a distinct character. Fran takes over as Betty Lou in season 2,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and weirdly Betty Lou is only in one street scene, or excuse me, she's only in one episode where she's in more than one street scene
Right.
between 1971 and
Uh-huh.
1993. So,
Wow, yeah. I seem to remember her only in inserts, and it's funny because my memory of Betty Lou, and you have to remember, I'm born in 1971,
mhm.
and they weren't repeating the
No.
street scenes. So my only recollection of Betty Lou is going to be from inserts, and I always thought, and I'm sure that this is not factual, but my thought growing up was that Betty Lou and Prairie Dawn were cousins. And it was like that city mouse, country mouse situation. Because that Betty Lou was more of the, like, had the overalls and the braids, and Prairie had the dress. And so that was my interpretation of it growing up.
Well, that's so much, and again, so much of what I'm hoping to explore, because it feels like a lot of what you're even saying there comes from books. And I don't know if you
Mm.
had like the Sesame Street books growing
I
up.
I didn't
Um,
have all the I had a couple, but
yeah, I
not the
mean, no one
ones that
had
really
all of them.
featured.
There were thousands of them.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like kids I know had some, and I mostly had the records, although I didn't have all the
Sure,
records.
I mean, there
And
were thousands of those
yeah,
too, it felt
exactly.
like.
And I think kids I babysat eventually, because I started babysitting at 11, like they had books. But yeah, like I'm always curious as to how much canon there is in the books, because I know that some books were written by some of the writers, but a lot of them weren't.
Sure. No, absolutely. So it is this interesting thing, but certainly there isn't much in the way of a consistent character
Right.
or really with like any depth. And then there was, other than that, as far as like female Muppets go, you literally only had Roosevelt Franklin's mother, who is
Right, which
just
was voiced by Loretta.
and is wonderful, but is just Roosevelt Franklin's mother.
Yeah,
And
she's a
Granny,
means to an end.
yep, exactly. And Granny Fanny Nesselrode, who I don't know how familiar you are with Granny Fanny
I mean, I've
Nesselrode.
heard Carol talk about her, but
Yeah,
it's not really anything, the name is more well
memorable.
known than the character.
Weirdly, we really enjoyed. I had a guest on to talk about that last week actually, and
Uh-huh.
we kind of enjoyed her. She's basically like if Mr. Noodle could talk.
Okay.
But she only lasted from 1971 to 1973.
And wasn't that also Carol?
It was actually Jim originally,
Okay.
and then Carol took over. So what you're really seeing is in 1971,
Hmm.
and specifically the first time we see Prairie Dawn, I
Hmm.
actually went and checked the dates on, is January 13th, 1971.
Wow, I wasn't born yet. I was born in December of 71,
There you
so
go.
uh-huh.
I also wasn't born yet.
Well, yeah, I know that, but
Hmm.
I think there are people who think I'm older than I am, which I get, Embrace your youth.
No, no, no. Listen, I don't look at,
It's no, no.
I
It's
don't take
okay.
it for granted at all. But
Skincare, SPF always.
oh, you know it. I'm the one who's always asking all of my friends, like, hey, have you guys put on sunblock?
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
where?
parasols. Parasols, man. Parasols
Hmm.
are the best. Yep.
So in 71, we first see Prairie Dawn, and
Hmm.
I talked to Fran a little bit about that. But one thing that I was really fascinated with these early Prairie Dawn sketches is, compared to so many of the other characters, it feels like you do have a strong sense of what Prairie's personality is pretty early on, which I was glad to see.
Yeah, I had forgotten how erudite she was. I'd forgotten that this was a character and I'm sure that all must have come from the fact that this was a purposeful attempt at a character. I don't think Betty Lou or whatever the Betty Lou was pre-Prairie was not thought out. It was just an anything Muppet that they happened to name Betty Lou, and could have been after
100%.
someone's niece or sister or what or mother or what have you. So, like in the early days, like Grover and Cookie and Bert and Ernie, well, maybe not Cookie, but like Grover and Bert and Ernie and Big Bird and Oscar, and the count was predated, and I mean, sorry, the count was the season before that, and no, it was the same season. I'm sorry, it was the
No,
same
no,
season. But
the counts actually after this.
Oh, okay. So, but I'm sure it was being developed around the same
Sure,
time.
sure. Oh yeah, I know they're all very close in time, and obviously, again, like, unfortunately, we can't know the like exact full history,
No, no, no. But
but
I mean, I'm saying if they're both in season two, they're doing pre-production on season two
yeah,
simultaneously,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
So these
absolutely.
characters are being thought out. Now that Cookie Monster is called Cookie Monster, they're like, okay, we're going to create these new characters. There has to be something to them. So thought is being put into Prairie Dawn at this point. And I mean, I'm guessing again.
Yeah,
I'm not
we
even
can
born.
only guess, and
Right,
again,
but based on the other characters that were being introduced at this time, Snuffleupagus, and there is purpose behind them. They are not just a means to an end, like Roosevelt Franklin's mother, or the five people in my family, or any of the anything Muppets with the interchangeable pieces that are just there to play the role needed for the insert.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so I did Fran talk about having input on the character, or was she just at the mercy of what she was given in the script?
What Fran talks about, and obviously part of the thing, and I'm sure you can understand this, is I wonder obviously how much Fran remembers, because there's a certain point where it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
A, this was 50 years ago,
Right.
B, it was just her job. You
It
know
was
what
her
I
job.
mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah.
Well,
And
that's what I'm saying is I'm guessing
yeah,
that she wasn't consulted.
and one thing that we talked about too was that Fran didn't even really think of puppetry as her full main
Oh,
job. And
absolutely
yeah,
not.
which I mean, I know but one thing that she did talk about was that it very much was her trying to figure out what this character would sound like
Mm-hmm.
based on what the character looked like. And there was
Right.
a conversation about that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, other people were writing the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's certainly some, I mean, I'm sure there's some ad-libbing going on, because there
Mm-hmm.
almost always is some,
Mm-hmm.
this absolutely, this stuff feels very specifically written.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a little tough to know how much, and she takes credit, obviously, or has taken credit for the name
Oh,
Prairie
sure.
Dawn.
Yeah. Because
Um,
she was just little girl before.
yeah, well, it's actually interesting. The first sketch she appears in is the one with Sherlock Hemlock, who had
Mm-hmm.
also debuted this season.
Right. Yep.
Sherlock Hemlock sees all.
Hello.
Huh? Oh, I didn't see you.
What do you suppose has been happening here?
Aha! Has something been happening here?
Oh, yes, indeed. Look, there's all this stuff on my friend's lawn.
Stuff on the lawn? That sounds like a job for Sherlock Hemlock. Let's look for clues.
All right.
I sent you some clips, and
Yes, I saw that one. Mm-hmm.
the Sherlock Hemlock one I cut short because
Mm-hmm.
halfway through it really just becomes Sherlock Hemlock listing things. But
Yeah.
she's Penelope in that.
Oh,
She's
okay.
referred to as Penelope.
Okay.
And then she's referred to as little girl for a while.
Right.
And then it's not until like April, so like 4 months later, that
Mm-hmm.
they actually start calling her Prairie. But again, there is this consistency to her. And even if that consistency isn't tied to the name,
Mm-hmm.
and she is little girl in some ways, the
Mm-hmm.
same way as Betty Lou was just little girl.
Right.
That first thing that I'm so glad you pointed out is that fact that her thing at first was that she was very erudite, to use
Mm-hmm.
the word that you used.
Yeah.
There was this whole thing where it was like she used these like $10 words
Yeah.
that then the adults would basically translate.
Well, then it is my lucky day.
It is most advantageous that you have encountered us.
What?
Oh, she said it's lucky that you happened to be passing by and met all of us right here.
Yeah.
I found that fascinating because obviously that had gone away a little bit by the time I was watching the show,
Yeah.
as far as the translation of the words. But I really like that. And I've always tried to, I guess I didn't really connect the dots to that, but I just know that she's always been well spoken. like always. That's remained. But I think the level of erudite has diminished a little bit. Certainly the translation went away.
Yeah, and it's something we see go away. Again, I sent you a bunch of clips just from the 70s,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
something that I think we do see go away. By the pageants, and that's what I'd really love to talk about,
Oh,
is like
sure.
that doesn't feel like an element of the pageant structure, but that sense that like she's smart and she's very particular,
Mm-hmm.
and she's quiet but
Mm-hmm.
not.
Not meek.
Yes, exactly,
Although she
exactly.
is scared of mice.
That is true. That comes up twice, that she's
Yes.
scared of mice.
Yes.
um but I really liked that, and that felt really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
as I mean, again, like, obviously I'm a fan of this character, and I mean, I'm a fan of all the Muppets, but Prairie is my favorite, and
Yeah.
a lot of that again comes from obviously later stuff, and some of the
Mm-hmm.
really really funny stuff, especially in the 90s, like Singing in the Rain with
Yeah.
Grover is the one
Yeah.
everyone always cites.
Sure,
But
sure.
like, it was really refreshing to see a kind of character that I felt like I understood after, doing 4 episodes prior to this, where I was like, I don't know. And then this time Betty Lou is this time she's performed by Jerry Nelson,
Right,
and
right,
she wants to build using a hammer, and it's like,
right.
yeah, so it was really, it was definitely a relief to kind of catch up, like, after doing these 4 episodes where I didn't understand what I was talking about.
Yeah.
It felt good to be like, this is it here. And you
And I
know,
think some of that's just the consistency of having a single performer perform it. Like you said, if you have a character that sometimes is performed by Frank and sometimes performed by Jerry and sometimes maybe even, I don't know, in other cases there were characters voiced by Marilyn Sokol and
yep.
puppeteered by one of the guys. Um, or even Carol, or in the case, I mean, that happened later, but Roosevelt Franklin's classmates, being voiced by Sonia and Loretta. Um, so to have that consistency of character and to have Fran interpret this little girl, even if she didn't have a consistent name yet, but to take the look of Prairie, because that was the same puppet, right? She didn't change except for, the um she didn't really that little Prairie puppet didn't change
They
much.
unsewed the handkerchief, which which I'm glad about.
Yes, yes. Well, yes. It
She
could have been
had
worse. It could have been gloves and,
Yeah, she
yeah.
has for those, I mean, again, like, this is an audio medium. She has a handkerchief sewn to her left hand in the first, like, 10 or so appearances,
See,
which,
the video quality is so, like, you have to remember
yeah, I
standard
mean, we're
definition television on a 13-inch screen back then. No one was even going to see that handkerchief.
right. I never, so I'm gonna say, I never noticed it until
I didn't
when I
notice it
had
ever.
Fran on 2 weeks ago. Fran mentioned Prairie's
Oh.
handkerchief, and
Oh.
I was like, there's a handkerchief?
I
And
never
then I
noticed it
then I
either.
went back and I was like, boy, there sure is a handkerchief.
Yeah, I had never noticed that. That's hilarious. But going back to the consistency of the look of the character, handkerchief notwithstanding, if Fran is, and Fran's new to puppetry, and so she's establishing this character, and one thing that Fran is very, very good at is, she comes from theater, and you are there's a consistency required in theater, right? Because you rehearse and rehearse and rehearse to get to a point where a show is locked, and then you have to maintain that show. And I know that there are different schools of thought on actors who like to shake it up every night, but if you shake it up every night, it's a house of cards and can come tumbling down. There needs to be a certain amount of consistency. That's not to say you're doing it rote or robotic or, not mindful, not being reactive, but there does need to be consistency of intent. And Fran made Prairie very consistent. And I think that consistency and nailing that feel and sound helped.
Now, I mean, and that's such a great point. And obviously, like again, this ties into to some of your background. Like when you get or when you got um oh, that feels mean to phrase it that way. When you got new puppet characters like we were talking about, like how much when with Elizabeth and Lulu and Curly Bear and also like your characters on other shows, on Don Quixote, on Wobulus World, on Helpsters. How could I forget the Helpsters? How do you go about sort of developing like a character? Were you given sort of the freedom to design, to develop the personality your way? Were you just working with a script? Like, how did it feel for you? And obviously this was 20 years later, but like what was that experience like in that
It,
case?
well, it's different every time, and in the case of Elizabeth, she started out as just a one-off anything Muppet who showed up at the end of a script. It was an episode where Jerry Nelson had a little boy character named Jerome who moved to Sesame Street, and the whole street scenes were all about him meeting everybody on Sesame Street. I believe it may have been one of those shows that was the first episode of a new season where you're basically reintroducing the audience to this neighborhood, right?
Sure.
And Jerome is talking about his friend Elizabeth back home the whole time. And at the very end, Elizabeth comes to visit him. And I didn't know what the puppet was going to look like till I got on the set. All I saw was I mean, she had two lines, right? Hey, Jerome, I'm here. We're visiting. And like, I love this place or something like that. So when there was a parenthetical that said loud, right? And then I saw what the puppet looked like and I knew exactly how it should sound.
Hello, everybody! It's me, Elizabeth, and I love numbers. I love the number 4, and I love the number 9. I love the number 3, and I love the number 732.
Now, what will happen sometimes with anything Muppets or one-off characters is when you do a read through before you block and tape the scene, sometimes a producer or the director or whoever will say, "Can you try this?" or "Can you try this?" And I'd been on the show for 5 seasons, but nobody really knew who I was. At least as far as the producers back then were concerned. I think, again, I'd been there since 93. This was in 97. Yeah, it was in 97. And I think after I did that scene, Michael Lohman introduced himself to me. um, so, so, I just was like, I swing big, right? If you know anything about my characters, I take chances. And part of that came from, oh gosh, this is not going to be a direct answer to your story at all. So the beauty of doing, if I hadn't gotten the Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss, I don't think I'd be here today at all. That show, I got to do 40 different characters and new characters every week and consistent characters, and I was doing what I love to do, right? Doing big, bold, strong characters. And we had a lot of autonomy on that show because we were so small. We were being shot at the same time Sesame Street and Muppets Tonight were being shot. That's the only reason I even got to audition, is because there weren't all the quote unquote good performers were already working on other things. So like I never would have even gotten to audition if it had been in production at any other time in any other year. So it made me, I don't want to say it made me brave, because I've always been brave on stage. I've always been brave as a performer. In real life, I'm not. But if I have permission to perform, I take chances. I swing for the fences. So I had the experience on Seuss of like, hey, I loved it because I love to do it. I genuinely love it. It feeds me. It is the air that I breathe. So to do a loud character on Sesame and take that chance was just already in my bones to a small degree. I hadn't thought about it being a risk at that time because, I mean, really, what did I have to lose? You know, you either do it or you don't. The one thing I can't stand is uncommitted characters, like the wimpiness. It's one thing if your character is being played wimpy. If that's a strong choice to be played wimpy. I'm talking about someone who's just not sure of what they're doing. That comes out. It doesn't matter how good a performer you are if you're not committed to whatever you're doing 100%. That's
Right.
just weak,
And
right?
again, and that's so much like what you were saying. You felt like you could notice with the early, Fran stuff here. Again, obviously we can't read her mind, but like there was a sense of like this is the character that we're doing. We are committed
Yeah.
to this character, and it's
Yeah.
we're not, we're sticking with it.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, again, like that's one thing that I can say about again about Elizabeth is a choice. You
Yeah.
absolutely made a choice.
Yeah.
Again, she is not a character that is unrecognizable or could be anything else. She is a
Yeah.
choice.
And so I was lucky that then there were other scripts with other anything Muppets and they started plugging Elizabeth into those scripts. I think there were like 3 or 4 of them, maybe 3 that season. And they instead of it being just another anything Muppet or monster, they made it Elizabeth, which was amazing. And then the following season, they started writing a couple of episodes with her specifically, which was like dream. But there were people who, I always got a sense that there were people who didn't get why she had to be so loud or why she had to be so her. Um, and my feeling is, well, we've already done the sweet little girl. We've already done this and that and the other. We don't have anybody that sounds like this. So there are little girls who sound like this. I always feel like I hate that it becomes a fight, but my fight is always I find I have to fight so much because just to be different, right? To present a different version. I had that a little bit on Seuss got challenging because there were a lot of little girl characters and I didn't want them to sound all the same.
Mhm.
And Kathy Mullen was the puppet captain. So, you know, she got first pick of whatever the script had that week, and I was happy to take the leftovers because I was just happy to be on the team. Um, but when I got other little girls, I was just trying to find a way to make them a little different. And so Megan Mullally versus Heather Tidbittle versus Sue Snoo, it's subtle, but it's, I, yeah, it's hard. So I'm I didn't know it takes time to learn what you have in you. And also you are the look of the character really does dictate the voice. So I was always trying to go with, I always say that a great puppet character is a beautiful marriage between the writer, the performer, and the workshop. Because it's the look of the character meets what the character is saying meets how the performer is both voicing it and physically manipulating it, how it's moving, how it's walking, and how it sounds.
I mean, that's so
And,
right because again, like if that wasn't true, then it wouldn't be puppetry, right? Like
right,
the reason the puppets exist and have designs is because that should be contributing to the performance,
right.
and the reason that things have writers is because
Hmm.
that should be contributing to the performance.
Well, and not just that, when you have thoughtful people at the workshop who are putting together, like, so for example, on Wubulous World of Dr. Seuss, especially the first season, one of my favorite characters was a character named Admiral Breeze, who showed up twice. And her very first line was "Hello, Sailor." And the shop made this beautiful, buxom, platinum haired, full lipped, just glorious puppet. And I knew it, like my suspicion of how she should sound absolutely was understood by the shop. The shop never heard what I was going to do. That puppet was brought to the set. I didn't know how it was going to look, and like somehow we were all on this, like we had all vibed. I don't even know who at the shop put her together. I don't know if it was Raleigh or Mary Bremer, or I don't know who, but I do know that it was like one of those glorious moments where it's just like, oh, I know what I'm doing here, and it just feels so good when it all comes together. And it was a choice that I hadn't done. I hadn't done a character like that before. I hadn't played a character like that before. I hadn't used that tone of voice in a character yet. So it's fun to discover those things as you go, but it always comes from the look. It always comes from the look of the character. And if you're lucky, it hews very closely to what the writer has envisioned. Um, Sometimes you're not on the same page and you have to find a way to make that work. So then you have to think. Like I played recently, well, I guess it was probably pre-pandemic. It was maybe 2019. It was just a little couple line thing. It was a checkout clerk at a supermarket on Sesame Street, and I just assumed that she would be, kind of sleepy-eyed and bored, and okay, yeah, blah blah blah. And she had no eyelids, and she just looked like she'd been caffeinated. So then it turned into, okay, yeah, whatever, thank you, and it was a better choice. I didn't have many lines. It was just, how are you today? Did you find everything you needed? But the look of this puppet gave me an inspiration to do something funnier and make a choice with the voice. So yeah, so Seuss, we didn't have time to sit and talk about, except for the main characters, but not even that much time. All those one-off characters, it was, just go, right?
And there was like a different one-off character every week, at least
almost
one, if
sometimes
not,
multiples.
yeah.
Sometimes multiples. They were whatnots, right? So they were
Yeah.
being put together constantly. And but yeah, and Cody, so jumping way ahead to Cody on Helpsters, I mean, my voice may have evolved a tiny bit. I think I was trying to make her a little raspier in the very, very beginning, but it falls into whatever's comfortable, right? Because it's got to be comfortable. The one thing that I established a very long time ago is it can never hurt. Because if you trash your voice, you're dead, you're gone. You have to take very good care of your voice. No character is worth losing your voice over. You have to find a way to do it safely.
And that is something, we were talking about sunblock earlier. I believe that
Uh-huh.
was, I don't remember if that was on mic or not, but voice care is also something I take very seriously. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. For
Yeah.
folks
And
at home, if you learn one thing from this podcast, it's to drink lots of water, do your vocal warm-ups.
But also, it took a long time for me to learn how to do a raspy voice placed not in the throat. I can do raspier voices now that don't hurt, but that took time to learn. So again, it was just a matter of time. And yes, some of it involved warming up or knowing how to yell without trashing. So yeah, but it has to be something that you're going to be able to do easily. It's kind of like, I remember a long time ago, I was having an issue with my hair, and I had a hairstylist that I only went to once. She's like, well, you can make your hair do anything. And I said, really? Because I don't think so. My hair's going to do what it's going to do. It's like, no, you spend enough time on it, and it'll do what you want it to do. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. And I think it's that way with characters. If you're trying to do something forced with your voice that your voice doesn't want to do, the performance is going to sound forced. It's got to be natural. The vocals have to be natural and the performance has to be natural. And those are two different things. People always just talk about, oh, the voice. It's not just the voice. It's the breath. It's the cadence. It's the intent. It's the emotion. It's the drive. It's the spark. It's the intensity or lack thereof. It's the breathiness. It's the this and the that and a million other things that have nothing to do with sheer vocal quality or even placement. And boy, am I off track. But so yeah, and then Don Quixote, Oh, God bless them for giving me a long leash. They liked what I did, and they let me, with Harriet Elizabeth Cow, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, um, I was not sure what I was going to do with Harriet when I went on set. I had not, I don't think I had done a voice audition for Harriet. I had only done a voice audition for Duck Duck. And interestingly enough, my voice auditions for Duck Duck, I did two voice auditions, and I wound up doing a blend of both of them once I saw the puppet and put on the puppet. Um, and that came pretty quickly. Harriet, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And the very first episode I did with Harriet is not quite what it wound up being. But I did want to do a Pittsburgh dialect. And I know that in preschool, dialects are sort of frowned upon. But because it's Fred Rogers Productions, which is very tied to Pittsburgh, there's a lot of Pittsburgh pride that comes from it. They let me do it. And slowly but surely, I have made it more and more. The Yinzer has been more and more intensified over the 3 seasons of doing the show.
Hey, well, help that song help, donkey.
And because I think in the beginning I thought, well, I need to make her a little, not prim, but I held back a little with her. And I think that only lasted a couple of episodes. But then COVID hit, so I wasn't out there performing it as much. So it really wasn't only until the second season that I was actually really able to have a lot of fun locking in the full gregariousness of Harriet, the full Yinzer package. Because I think I may have been trying to do two things with Harriet, trying to make her, because I didn't know what all the scripts were going to be yet. We didn't have them yet. So the character description of Harriet early on was that she was going to be more of an advisor, right? More of an advisor to Donkey, a neighbor who was, and she is that, but I think we accomplish it in a different way than it seemed spelled out in the early days. So it was less, I don't want to say motherly, but like, teacherly, I suppose, was the early way that I thought she would be approached. And now it's just like, no, she's just her own being who happens to give good advice, which is always a better way to do it. So again, I'm still making mistakes and learning from them decades into this career. Again, really long answer.
No. I mean, listen, I'm happy you gave a really long answer because that was all super interesting. Like,
Oh,
I also,
glad
I
you thought
also
so.
knew that that's where, like, that again, you, you're very opinion. Wait, what was the phrase I used at the beginning?
I don't remember. I just know it was a nice way of saying opinionated.
Yeah, but let's bring it back to some of these in particular
Hmm.
because I really do want to talk about sort of again as this character, and again I think we can agree this character starts with a really strong and specific basis, but
Hmm.
as this character sort of very quickly becomes what we think of when we think of Prairie Dawn,
Hmm.
in through so much. And, within 3 years, January 16th, 1974, weirdly, almost 3 years exactly from her first appearance, is when we first see these pageants.
Hmm.
And Fran talked about loving doing these pageants and loving sort of the dynamic that it brought out between Prairie and the boys, as
Right.
she called them. She called them the boys.
Sure.
Um, and you see some really, really good and really funny and really specific choices being
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious, like, what were your thoughts watching some of these? We watched some of them. I don't, again, but The Flower is the first one.
Yeah.
There's a couple others in the
Yes,
70s.
but I wish you'd included the tooth one. That's my favorite because that's got the whole thing about her doing the monologue at the top about this play was written by Bert and it was directed by Bert
And if you love the play, you can thank Bert. But if you hate it, you have no one but Bert to blame.
That
And
is such a. I don't know why I didn't include that in the clip compilation
that's one of my
because
favorites.
one, not only is that just generally funny,
Yeah.
I love that kind of sassiness
Oh,
that
yeah.
comes along with it.
Yeah.
Like you almost get the sense that like Prairie is kind of upset that someone else is horning in on her territory. Like,
I wouldn't call it that. I would say that basically Bert's in charge and she's just telling it like it is. You know? It's like, okay, you want to be in charge? Then it's on you, and I'm going to let everybody know.
exactly, exactly. And that's such a funny choice. And you see in these two again the choice to make Prairie bad at playing the piano is really
Yes.
funny.
Yes. And I mean, I never knew John Stone, but um it seems to me also like it's a Norman Styles or, choice. Because again, you got Norman Styles coming from sitcom and the best sitcom characters have flaws.
Right.
So you can't have, so the best thing about a perfect little girl is making her imperfect.
And now it is time for our drama to start. Whoops.
And again you see that and again that's why I love the rudeness that comes in the tooth one. And
Yes.
again, boy, I should have sent you the tooth one, but I didn't have
It's
to
okay.
because
You didn't have to. Oh my goodness, I watched that all the time in college. No, I remember one of my favorite Sesame records was Bert and Ernie Sing Along, and they're singing a song about the man who has plenty of soft peanuts is giving his neighbor none. He shan't have any of my peanuts till his peanuts are gone. He shan't have any of mine. He shan't have any of mine. He shan't have any of my peanuts till his peanuts are gone. And Prairie sings a verse. Um, the man who has plenty of soft sweet soda crackers has given his neighbor none. Phew, he shan't have any of my soft sweet soda crackers till his soft sweet soda crackers are done. He shan't have any of mine. And then she's like, you guys gonna sing? Because nobody's joining in on the chorus. And that felt very like that's Fran. Fran imbuing Prairie with the attitude of, come on, guys, we're all supposed to be singing this chorus. And I think that some of that came from being the only girl in this room full of guys, and she's got to be responsible, and you're not playing along, I'm going to call you out on it.
yeah, I mean again that absolutely and God, it's so funny because again, I was going to send you the clip from Bert and Ernie sing along as well. It's on
Oh,
my
wow.
I have a master list that I made and Stephanie, I put way too much work into making this master list,
Oh,
but
boy.
I now have a list of every single clip with Prairie Dawn and every
Wow.
single album and book
Oh,
from
my.
1971 through 1979, which
Wow.
was not maybe not the most productive use of my time.
Hey, if it makes you happy.
But yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I love about the fact that she's on the Bert and Ernie sing-along album in particular
Mhm.
is to me that always felt like sort of like a statement of purpose that like Prairie was definitely part of the main gang at this
Yeah,
point. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, and I mean, you would be foolish to do these records without utilizing Fran's voice.
because it's very good.
She came to New York to do musical theater. Of course it's great.
And the word is danger. Danger. Danger, baby, watch. Wow, 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 wow. Danger. Danger. Danger, baby, watch. Wow, 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 wow.
And I think that, some of there's so many reasons why, and I think some reasons why Fran's not on certain albums may have to do with Fran's availability or lack thereof.
Sure. I
She
mean,
was doing other things. She was doing soap operas and theater and, major motion pictures.
we chatted a little bit about that as well. The fact that Prairie, sort of started mostly being in inserts
Hmm.
from like 1974 through like the late 80s. And that
Hmm.
largely was because, Fran had other priorities as
Right,
well.
right.
And we discussed it. We've discussed it plenty of times on this show.
Uh-huh.
But like the inserts were filmed separately, and
Yes,
that gave Jim and Frank a lot more flexibility with their
sure.
recording
Especially
schedule.
when they were doing Muppet Show and
And
yeah,
when they were doing Muppet Show, that's in another
right.
country.
Well, and also
Um,
you could shoot back then, you could shoot 6 inserts in a day. That's a lot of content that
yeah,
gets repeated over and over again. So you get a lot of bang for your character buck as far as presence on the show.
hmm
You get a lot more bang for your buck being in inserts than you do in the street scenes, which at that time, even when they were doing 130 episodes, 120 episodes a year, would maybe air twice
yeah.
and never again.
But again, like, but that's why sort of like the reason that there aren't that many in terms of number Prairie appearances, but like she becomes this character who sticks around is because these were all segments and these were all re-aired.
Yeah.
The pageant stuff was re-aired,
Yes.
again, and I'm younger than you, but like a lot of these clips were still airing, even in
Oh,
the 90s.
until the show went to high definition, they absolutely were still airing. Yes.
And
Yes,
again,
they
like
were.
that's what I was watching, again was then. And a lot of this still stuck around. And
Well, and then Fran was available as in 1993 when Zoe,
yeah,
was created, and then she was doing Roxy Marie and Wanda. Like Fran had committed to the show at that point.
yes, and again, we talked to Fran about
Yeah.
that shift.
So then you had even more inserts with Prairie
Absolutely,
at that
absolutely.
point.
And that's when you get the wonderful, wonderful
Stuff with
Prairie and
Cookie.
Cookie
Yeah.
dynamic,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is my favorite comedy duo
Oh
in
yeah.
the Muppets. Like
Yeah.
the entirety of all of the Muppets. I think the Prairie and Cookie stuff
Yeah.
is about as good as it gets.
You cannot have a cookie.
No, no, what kind of answer is that?
sorry.
Oh no,
Can
oh
I
no,
have a
no.
cookie?
Well, okay, me no panic, me no panic.
Wait, cookie.
Prairie?
Yes.
Me going to ask you another question.
Okay.
Why? Why me
Easy,
not have
right.
cookie?
Easy,
Prairie,
easy.
please,
Calm down.
please.
Calm down.
Oh,
Easy,
because
Cookie
that
Monster.
cookie.
Easy. Cookie Monster.
Yeah, I know. It always makes me sad that I missed out on that. There have been no Prairie Cookie bits in my tenure as Ms. Dawn. But then again, I guess that was just very she did plenty with David, but I think that was also very specific to her and Frank.
Yeah, that dynamic and that friendship.
Hmm.
But again, like the albums is another great example because that's what we like you said, like so much of this stuff wasn't repeated, but the
Yeah,
albums were repeated.
right.
You know
Well, and
what
that's
I
how I
mean?
knew
Like,
her name was Prairie Dawn. You saw it on the cover. I mean, on the
yeah,
on the back of the album, on the
exactly.
track.
I mean, for me it was books,
Uh-huh.
again, the old, and I had a bunch of like the old picture books growing
Uh-huh.
up, even stuff printed long before I was born, but like
Yeah.
that we still had that like we got from the library and stuff. And like
Uh-huh.
that was a major way that the character stuck around,
Hmm.
for
Sure.
years and years until Fran returns to the show
Hmm.
full time basically in 1993.
Hmm. Yeah. I think at some point, I suspect that the character was able to survive Fran's absence, not just because of the inserts being continually repeated, but also she was starting to be on merchandise. I don't know that there were many dolls, but the books, the records, but also like, t-shirts. She was in the group, the
Yeah.
calendars. She was on the calendars. greeting cards, paper goods. She had a presence there. So once you have that presence, you know, I have come to realize that in order for a character to survive, you have to have something or someone championing that character. It doesn't matter. I've had to make peace with the fact that it's not necessarily all on my own shoulders in the performance. You have to have writers who will write for that character, a head writer who will let that script be produced and not replace that your character with another character, just plug in another character into that script. Or you have to have, popularity, or licensing revenue, or someone championing that character, whether it's coming from above or beyond or outside. So because Prairie really was, for a very long time, the only girl, especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
You had to have that represented. I mean, it would have been, it's the reason why Fran was brought on. It's the reason why the character was created, but you had to maintain that. You couldn't just get rid of that character after 2 years and say, "Oh, well, we tried." You had to, and what Fran did was so great. And so I'm not saying that her greatness had nothing to do with it, but I'm saying that at that point, they had Prairie, so they're like, okay, this is our little girl. This is our girl. This is our female representation as far as the Muppets are concerned, and we're going to go all the way with it, and that's it. And once you're sort of in that character grouping, you're in.
Yeah.
Which is great. But then once you start having more and more characters added to the show, it becomes much harder to be part of that character grouping. It becomes much harder to be in that photograph that represents these are the characters of Sesame Street.
Which was unfortunately so much like, and again, like I'm not telling tales out of school. This is something that they've commented on, like the Sesame executives and team and everything. But like, when you joined in the 90s and when Fran returned in the 90s, that was so much of the problem with the early 90s is there were like 70 characters.
Yeah, well, and I think there's been an ebb and flow, of characters forever. Because now, in the 80s, they started introducing more characters because they started having, Jim and Frank and Jerry and Richard were off doing other things. They were doing Muppet Show, they were doing Fraggle Rock. So they had to bring in new performers. Well, they all weren't gonna be doubling, or having new voices for Bert and Ernie and the Count and all these established characters. They were still gonna have those core characters exist in inserts or maybe a couple of street scenes a year. So they had to create new characters for Marty and Pam Arciero and Camille Bonara. And you know what I mean? You're not gonna bring in new people and not have characters for them to play. So you create these new characters and you try, and also times change. I mean, the show is an experiment. So you try new things and with those new characters or with Bert and Ernie not being there all the time, okay, so let's see, can we find somebody to bounce off of? Like Telly becomes a character, right?
Yeah.
Brian, because you have got Brian Meal, right? And so Telly becomes a character and he evolves and then he starts having this relationship with Oscar. And okay, so what other characters can interact with Telly? Because you don't just want to have characters that only interact with one character. It's a neighborhood. You learn so much about characters by having them have different relationships with different characters. So then, yeah, you have Telly and Baby Bear's friendship, and then Baby Bear has a family. Kevin Clash comes onto the show. He gets Elmo. He wants characters to develop of his own. He develops Hoots. You've got Humphrey and Ingrid and Natasha. You've got David Rudman coming onto the show. You've got all these amazing performers coming onto the show. They've got to do something. So, and we all want to work, and we all want screen time. And at that time, you've got 120 episodes to fill. And you've got all these great performers.
Right, right.
And you don't have Jim and Frank all the time. So, hey, let's populate with new characters. And then what happens is, and you have a million characters. Okay, we got to get rid of a bunch of characters. We're going to cut it way, way down. And then the same thing happens all over again. And so then you have great performers like Carmen Osbar coming in and developing Rosita, which was so, so necessary. And you have, hey, Fran's going to come back. Well, we can't just have her play Prairie. I mean, let's give her, also Prairie's an older character. Prairie's 6. We want a character that's going to be Elmo's age because Elmo is very popular. Elmo is young. We want to have somebody who's going to be Elmo's, a contemporary. So let's create Zoe. That's how. And again, this is a very simplistic way of thinking about how characters get developed, but it's not an out there thing. It's a very realistic thing. It's production, right? You've got a cast who wants to work. You've got writers who want to write new things for new characters because, let's face it, one of the reasons why Snuffy was seen by humans was also, yes, to believe children when it came to their truth and abuse and whatnot. But the writers also really got tired of figuring out convenient ways of the adults just missing Snuffleupagus. That story gets old. It's better to have Snuffleupagus have a relationship with other characters on the street. So the writers have more flexibility if they have more characters to write for or more character combination possibilities. But then, it's a cycle. And every time there's a baby on the show, hey, okay, we're going to do a whole thing about a baby. We're going to have baby Alice and we're going to have baby Natasha. And then you're like, hey, we're tired of this baby. We're not going to see this baby anymore. Okay, we need a new baby. Hey, Curly Bear. Okay, it's going to be a baby. And what are we going to do with this baby? And is she going to grow up? Is she going to stay a baby? I don't know. We're tired of this baby. We're not going to see this baby anymore. Hey, Gina's going to adopt a baby.
What they did with Curly Bear is they just stopped using Curly Bear.
Yep. But,
this.
Yeah, I do know this. But, now to be fair with Curly, it was a little frustrating because there were some inconsistencies with how she played, especially early on. In some scripts, she wouldn't be verbal. In other scripts, she'd be saying sentences. Sometimes she, would say all, saying, she would be babbling or just saying parts of sentences, but then when all the bear family was saying something, it'd be these, this song or something. I'm like, well, she can't just sing this song all of a sudden in unison with this family. So yeah, but you're at the mercy of a force that's bigger than yourself. You just want to work, and so you figure out a way to do it. I remember there was a episode about the family trying to hibernate, and they were trying to count sheep, and it was like the whole family was counting 5,671, 5,672, and I'm like, well, Curly can't count this high. So I didn't really ask, I just did it, and I guess they just let me do it. But the other bears are saying 5,671, 2, 5,672, 5,673, 2, because I figured Curly could only count to 2.
But that's a great choice. And again, to take it back to the conversation that, where we started, characters are built off of choices and strong choices.
Well, and I was also trying to think like a writer, even though I hadn't written for preschool yet. I've written in life and my own things and things that may never see the light of day, but I certainly know how economical you can be with a character choice, that you can say a lot about a character and it doesn't have to be a monologue, while also being very thoughtful about the audience and the curriculum that you're putting across. So nothing I ever did or ad-libbed was ever meant to do anything more than clarify a character or clarify a relationship. I was always very lucky at Helpsters that Tim Mecchione gave me a leash to, you know, add little flourishes. Or Cody, as originally conceived, was a very, she had to put across a lot of curriculum and was a leader, and but there was nothing really. I imbued a lot of fun to it. I figured if there's fun, if it's being done a fun way, and she's aware of the bad puns that she's doing, and she's deadpan and reactive, and it could be a little lighter. Um, but I also added, "You're very welcome." Initially, it was "Thanks for the help, helpsters," and then right to "We did it, everybody." And I said, you know what? I think Cody should say "You're very welcome." And I didn't ask, I just did it. And because what are they going to say? Don't say "You're
Yeah,
welcome"?
don't show kids that saying you're welcome is.
But it is fascinating to me because after "We did it, everybody," I think it was only the second time we did it that I added "Yeah, we did" after. And then
Oh, that's such a good touch, though. Like,
well, that because it was the attitude. I'm like, I want to give her a little spark. You know what I mean? So that she's not just, I'm in charge, do what I say, the B word, the bossy word. I hate it, but it's very easily gone there, and it's related to Prairie, and we can get back to this. But um, I really wanted to just give her, like, she's a redhead. She's got to have a little fire. So the "Yeah, we did" what was so funny is that if you were to watch the show well, I don't know if the episodes aired in the order in which we shot it, but
yeah, I mean,
you'll
who
see a
knows?
you'll see a slow evolution in the "Yeah, we did" moment where some of the guys kind of say it with me weakly. Like, in the beginning, they're just like, "Yeah, we did," and then by the second or by the third season, the second production year, Mr. Prim's saying it loud. Marty's saying it louder than I am. Like, they're all just like, "Yeah, we did." Like, they came up with it. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm glad everyone's on board with this.
Stephanie, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but during COVID, I was so anxious about COVID that for whatever reason, and I was in my 30s at the time, but
Uh-huh.
the only thing I could watch without panicking was the Helpsters because it was just
Oh.
so rigid and predictable.
Yeah, yeah. That I
So,
mean, I liked that the format was fascinating to have a format that was sort of plug and play.
yeah. But again, like
Um,
that was the only thing my brain could like
oh.
do early on.
Well, you
Again,
were not the only one who was anxious.
yeah, no,
Sometimes I think we forget. It was just 5 years ago, but it's easy to forget just how terrifying that was.
yeah. But so that was, again, so like believe me, I know exactly when you're like, yeah, and then Cody says, "Yeah, we did." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, no, of course I know that."
Well, not everybody. Let's just say it's been made very obvious to me through my encounters with the world that not everybody has seen Helpsters, and not nearly as much as you have. So
Well,
it's fine.
I know that I'm an outlier for my
No,
age
I'm
bracket, and it
very
was again
grateful. I am
just
very
because of my
grateful that you
anxiety.
watched no, I'm very grateful that you watched and enjoyed it. I don't care why someone watches something that I do. I'm just glad that they watch it and enjoy it.
For folks listening at home, if there's one thing you should seek out, it's the soundtrack to Helpsters
We
because
had
you
good
guys did
songs.
some incredible stuff on that soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah, we had some good songs. Paul Buckley was our composer, and we had some great artists come in and do stuff with us. We just had great guest stars, period. I mean, it was
Yeah,
a great weird show.
and
And I
lot of
think,
lot of like cool
oh, very
musicians like
well.
on the
We,
indie scene and
oh
stuff like
yeah.
you
Well,
would never see on Sesame Street. And again, I don't mean that in an
no, no,
insulting way to
no, no.
Sesame Street, but it's a different crowd of musicians and
Hey, we
guests.
had cool guest stars, and we had cool guest stars who were sort of bubbling under in the New York comedy scene before they exploded afterwards. Michelle Buteau before she
Yeah.
exploded. Zach Cherry before Severance. Holy
Yep.
cow. Like, these people had done stuff, and I was familiar-ish with them, but like some of what these people were doing afterward, I'm like, what? Wait, what? I can't even begin to remember all of the people. But we had some very cool cats come on our show. Some great, I mean, again, just really great comedic actors who got it,
Yeah.
you know. Oh, and most of them had a really great time. I mean, yeah, we had a good time with the people who came on to play. But anyway, going back to that B word.
Yes.
So no. So what, it's sad that there are people who see Prairie as bossy. Because I don't see that. I see her as being a perfectionist. I see her as being type A. I see her as we just want nice things.
Yeah.
She's smart, and she just wants everyone to actually, give a crap and pay attention. Which again goes back to those pageants. She's not coming right out and saying it. She's just like, why are we doing this if we're not going to do it right?
And it shines through. And I love again that you're saying like it's not like she actually says it,
No.
but the audience can tell. And I'd like to think even children can tell. Again, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of when I saw these the first time, and who knows, I was 1 year old or whatever. So I don't remember, but like you get the sense that like she's doing this for the genuine love of it. And she just wants her friends to be their best selves too.
Yeah. And she cheers them on.
Yeah.
And it's not all about her.
And she's very happy when they get it right,
Yes.
again.
Good job.
Yep.
Which definitely happens in these as well.
Yep. But when she doesn't, it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Cue the snow, yeah.
It's again, and it's amazing, again, speaking about things that happen early, but like that dynamic with the Frank characters in particular starts really early.
Well, that album, that cue here is a question for you.
Which
I love that.
Isn't technically credited to Prairie Dawn on the album, and in the sketch they used a different Anything Muppet.
Yeah, I know.
But it
I was
also
shocked.
really feels like a Prairie, right? Like
No, I always thought it was Prairie and that she was just called Little Girl. I had never seen the insert done. So I was shocked when I saw the clip and it wasn't Prairie.
But I still consider that important because it is that Fran and Frank dynamic that again becomes such a highlight, especially moving into the 90s, starting there.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the same thing, in the She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain pageant, where she like basically has to like take care of Cookie Monster and like make sure that he's doing the right thing and staying on track.
Hey, Cookie.
What, Prairie?
Don't you know how to go around something?
Oh, sure. Can you sing again and me do it right this time? It's sounding terrific.
This is definitely the last time.
Here we go. Okay.
Which again becomes the whole dynamic.
So there's something very archetypal about it. The problem is most of the time you see it in pop culture, it's in buddy comedy movies, right? It's the good cop, bad cop. It's Beverly Hills Cop, right?
Yeah.
It's every movie where you've got it's the Odd Couple. It's Bert and Ernie.
Right.
But it's not respected the same way as Bert and Ernie are. It's Felix and Oscar. It's Abbott and Costello. It's Laurel and Hardy. You've got the person who, is like, I know what I'm doing, and the other person's just messing it all up.
Absolutely. And again, like obviously I'm not surprised that you understand and appreciate it, but that's exactly how I feel. And again, whether it's you talked about how characters need to be able to sort of interact with other characters, and I like that it's this slightly different dynamic with Grover and with Cookie, but it still kind of comes from the same place of like just wanting them to do it right. And again, like Grover and Cookie have different faults, obviously. They're very different characters, but it's that
and they
same...
mess up in very different ways for very different reasons, too.
Yeah.
Sing again.
Cut. No.
What? Was it me? Was I off key?
No, Grover.
What?
No, you were fine.
Oh, thank you. Somebody
No.
else.
Yes, do you see it's this white stuff?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is not rain.
What is it?
No, it is white and flaky and cold.
Uh-huh.
It is snow.
So it is.
Ah,
What a good director she is.
But it's that same idea of like, just can we just do this right? Because this
Yeah.
would be so good if we could just
Yeah.
do it right. This would be so good and everyone would be so happy.
Well, and the funny thing is, and I've remarked on this now and then, but I don't know if anybody's actually really it's sunk in for anybody, but Prairie is so much like Bert. And I don't know that Bert and Prairie have ever bounced off of each other because I think they're just too similar.
Stephanie, you know what was really I just watched the Happy Birthday episode.
Ah, yes, that's the closest she came. Yes, great episode written by Liz Hara.
And it was really funny because Bert, Bert or Ernie's like, we need to get more of your friends here. And Bert goes, I don't have any other friends, suggesting that Bert's only friends are Ernie, Telly, and Prairie Dawn. And I was sitting there and I was like, we don't see Bert interacting with Prairie Dawn or Telly
No.
that much, but
No.
I bet he would get along great with Telly and Prairie Dawn.
Well, and again, I've said the same thing about Telly. Telly has similar neuroses to Prairie. They're just, for lack of a better word, executed in a different way. They just come out in a different way. Bert, Telly, and Prairie are all neurotic characters.
Right. Which again is what I absolutely realized watching that episode, and especially when Bert's like, I don't have any other friends. I'm like, oh, I bet they would get up to some very, very neurotic hijinks
Well,
together.
also, it would just be fascinating to see them all just be at an impasse because I mean, I don't know. I would love to know what that dynamic would be. I would love to improvise with Marty and Eric, with those characters and just see what would come out. I'm fascinated and curious. But I remember I was just happy to I was happy to be there. I was happy to be in that episode at all. And then this was more of an homage to my pal Jen Barnhart, but when she's at the back table, I needed a bit of business before.
I was about to ask you about this, what I think you're about to say.
It's really, well, I'm not going to be shy. I'm going
Yes.
to dip into this oatmeal.
I cracked up. I'm just,
Thank you. I'm glad you heard it. No, it's just because, so, in a script, you have so-and-so enters and asks a question. Well, the character that they're entering and asking the question of needs to be there. But what is that character doing while they're there? So much of what a Muppet performer does is have to come up with bits of business. Either we are, doing something or actively walking it. We have to be active. We can't just be standing there waiting. You would never block a play like that where a character is, unless it's, a play where that's meant to be.
Yeah, an intentional choice.
Intention,
Yeah.
right. So it's easy to just say, so-and-so enters, Prairie is there. Like, well, what is Prairie doing while she's there? So because we had, oh my God, the set was
The set is so beautiful.
Our art department, under the lead of the great Katie Akana, who came to us on Helpsters, by the way, and then she brought her beautiful art department. Oh my gosh. Ariel Poster and Keith Olson and so many wonderful people. That set was gorgeous.
There was so much to look at. Like,
yes. And what I loved about it is it was very Pinterest friendly. Like, I'm not on Pinterest, but it was very accessible. You could have a Bert party and you could make all of those things.
I'm having a barbecue for my birthday tomorrow, and now I'm like,
happy birthday.
Thank you. And now I'm like, should I be making Bert hats?
I mean, those Bert hat, the bunting with the little Bert shirts.
Oh, so good. So good.
Oh my gosh, just all those tiny little things. So you have this beautiful set to look at and things to like, well, why? Let's interact with the set. Let's, say, hey, because there was an oatmeal bar, right? At Bert's party.
Such a brilliant touch. And
yeah, but nobody ever talked about the oatmeal bar. So I figured, okay, let's mention the oatmeal. Like, you know, but yeah, the I'm not going to be shy. I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to dip and tuck into this oatmeal, dip into this oatmeal. I crack
Yeah,
open
no,
this
I
oatmeal. I don't
forget the
remember.
exact wording.
I don't remember, but again, that came out of necessity, and they didn't cut it. They didn't make me loop it. So
Ah,
you throw it at the wall and hope it sticks.
anything else that you want to talk about with regards to either the clips we sent or anything else? I don't want to cut you short, but I also don't want to keep you here all night.
Oh
So
gosh, no, I understand. No, I think I would love to I would love to know what conclusions we're drawing we're supposed to draw from this, and I'm coming up empty.
that's a great question. What are we trying to say? And I think it's, I think that this project, and again, I speak about the project as a whole and not just the episode that you're here on.
Mhm.
I'm really just trying to put everything sort of in perspective because I'm fascinated by the fact that it really took, we can talk about Prairie Dawn being this like well-developed character and this character who was part of the core gang, on like Bert and Ernie's sing-along and on in books and on the posters and the photos of whatever. But there's this real sense, and again, like that it really wasn't until Abby Cadabby that there was a female character who was who was as prominent as the other male characters.
I don't know. I would say that Zoe, when she was
True, okay, yeah, but
created, she was definitely put at the center. Um,
it's your Zoe and Abby for sure.
and I think Rosita is very important and also underutilized in many ways. I think that Rosita serves an incredible purpose of the show on the show. She's an incredibly nurturing, loving character, but she's older, and I think
I love Rosita,
me
but
too.
I feel like Zoe, I absolutely like accept like was core.
Hmm.
Rosita was in so many episodes, but you know what it was? And again, it's like you were saying about like the merchandise.
Hmm.
There never was that much Rosita merchandise. And I
Hmm.
felt like that always made her feel
Mm.
less focused on, even if she was in so many episodes at the time. And Carmen does such a wonderful job with
Oh,
her.
she's brilliant.
But
She's brilliant.
it's interesting to think about all of this and put it all in context has kind of
Hmm.
been the project of this.
Hmm.
And thinking about like what does work and why did like what things was the show doing right in terms of female characters as much as what was the show doing maybe with room for growth, as we say in the education field, with regards to female characters. And it's nice to just focus on like what makes for a character that you would assume audiences would respond to and want to see more of versus, a character that whether it's audiences or writers or the performers didn't want to continue. And there's so many of these characters that, lasted for a season and didn't continue. And it's kind of like, well, what is the difference? And we can't say for certain. Like you said, there's so many factors, and I'd say only Fran knows for sure, but I don't even think Fran knows for sure because I think it involves the writers and the marketers, like you said about
Well,
like,
it's research as well. And I mean, I think that there are focus groups and
mm-hmm.
kids, I don't know how the show is tested. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know
me
how the
either.
show was tested. I don't know how I know that the show's testing has changed. I don't know how. But one thing I do know is that in my mind, you have to take testing with a tub of salt because, and you had mentioned this in the email. You had said, well, why are there so few female characters when half the population is female? And I'll tell you exactly why. The line that we were always told, what I heard a lot of in the 90s, was that girls will watch shows with characters that feature boys and girls, but boys will only watch shows that feature boy characters. So we need to write boy characters because we know both boys and girls will watch them. But my feeling is that, well, wait, is that something that you know for sure, or is that something that a kid told you in a focus group in front of other kids because he was ashamed to say he liked girl characters in front of other boys?
Yeah.
So these are, this is something that, and this is not something that is unique to Sesame Street. It's not something that's unique to the Muppet world. I mean, if you look at what happened with Star Wars and the sequels and Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega, like the loud voices that squashed and silenced those characters. It was not the way the majority of the world felt. I don't think it was the way the majority of the fans felt. And even, I'm not 100% sure that the people who were railing against those characters actually didn't like them. I think that it became something that was, this is what everyone is saying online, and this is something that pop culture as a whole is saying is bad with a capital B, so I'm going to jump on that bandwagon even because I can't admit to anybody that I actually liked Rose.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. Don't come at me. That's just my opinion, but I think that sometimes these things about quote unquote what audiences want or what kids want is maybe only truthful maybe a fraction of the time, depending on what time of day and what that kid had for breakfast and who else is listening to that kid's answers. Is that kid being 100% honest when he's saying, I don't like to watch shows with girls? Is that little boy being honest? And I think that I do believe that, yeah, girls probably, have some flexibility there because girls don't feel threatened if a boy is in charge on a show or the star of a show. Maybe because of culture with a capital C, you've got boys who feel threatened if a girl is a star of something, which is fascinating because Bluey, and I think one of the reasons why Bluey is successful is because they are not obviously gendered.
Yeah. That is, it's the kind of thing where, again, like me, again, I keep up with the puppet stuff for kids, but I don't keep up with everything for kids. Again, I'm in my 30s.
There's too much.
And there's too much, and I'm in my 30s. But like, I did not know that Bluey was a girl until fairly recently, because again, it just wasn't what my brain, again, like what I assumed. And
the beauty of it is it doesn't matter.
Right. And it's so interesting because like, so as a transgender woman, like I think a lot about like what are the assumptions that go into so many of these decisions versus like what are sort of like truths. And the fact of the matter is, the more research you do and reading you do into this stuff and the more people that you meet, you start to realize like so much of these things are constructions of society and the world around us rather than like inalienable, innate facts that like there's no way that like scientifically male children don't want to see this on TV. Like it isn't, it's a cultural thing,
like with the toys, right? And the boy aisles and the girl aisles at Toys R Us. And, there's always going to be exceptions to that. And to say something that is empirically true or to paint with a broad brush about any group in society is never a wise thing to do. But I think that, and again, when I say these things, I'm talking about preschool in general. I'm not talking specifically about Sesame Street saying this. I mean, I've worked on a lot of preschool shows, and so has my husband, Craig, worked on a lot of animated shows, and he would hear this in development, trying to develop shows that never went anywhere and what have you. This was just the party line. And there's a lot of, so it's still showbiz, right? I mean, it's all still show business. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and a lot doesn't succeed. So there is a fair amount of fear that drives decisions and a fair amount of being careful. And there's a responsibility when it's educational. There's an extra level of responsibility. And for whatever reason, anything that's educational is automatically cheap. You know, we don't have the money to invest in preschool educational television that we once did or that other countries do. So it's still expensive. You have less money to work with. You have more eyes being very, very scrutinizing, whatever it is, especially now with social media and bloggers. And you take one misstep, all it takes is for one person to say something and it blows up online. And so everybody is treading very, very carefully. And I get that. I understand why. But what happens is then you start believing these things to be true, that boys don't like to watch girl characters. And yeah, life's not that simplistic.
And again, I think it's so interesting to mention it from the scheme of educational TV shows, because it feels like part of the role you would think of an educational show, and again, I'm speaking in general, I'm not just speaking to Sesame Street here, but part of the goal should be to teach kids about the world and how it works and what kind of people they might encounter in the world
Yes,
and how it
however, if the
works.
kid's not going to watch the show, they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to learn anything. So it's got to be attractive to them in some way.
You've got this balance. Yeah.
Got to
And
find what is going to be the appealing thing. What is the secret sauce? How are you going to hide the vegetables in the brownie? And that is not as easy. And that's the other thing about, preschool television, educational television. Everyone thinks it's so easy. It's so easy. It's just for kids. Who cares? It's easy. No, no, no. And this is the conundrum. And we find ourselves being responsible for formulating the minds of entire generations of children. That's a lot on your back. So of course everybody's scared, and of course everybody's concerned, and of course everybody's very, very, thoughtful about these things. But sometimes you just want to have fun with characters. We
yeah.
just want to have a good time. We want to entertain as much as we want to educate. Because if they're not watching, they're not going to learn. So it's tough. It's tricky. And yes, you're absolutely right. You should want to show kids all of the possibilities that are out there and buck the stereotypes and say, okay, see what it can be, see how good this can be, see how fun this can be. Hey, having this little girl in charge is not going to cause the sun not to rise in the morning. It's not the end of the world. Seeing trans characters on screen, seeing female characters in Star Wars movies, that is not going to end things, right? You'd think that would, and that I love that notion. That'd be great. You just have the bad apples ruining it for everybody else. And so, yeah, and the thing is, there's no formula for success. There's no way to be able to say, well, if we do X, Y, and Z, then that automatically means we'll be fine. So it's the taking chances, and Sesame in its infancy, that first season, again, it's an experiment. It bucked all the trends. It did everything that shows were not doing at that time, which is why it's the legendary institution that it is. But it is not immune to criticism, and it is not immune to the realities of the world, and it is, it's not a utopia in the sense that we can do whatever we want and there won't be criticism.
Yeah.
So to have Prairie Dawn in a parallel, let's just say in a parallel world, for Prairie Dawn to be up front for all 56 seasons, as important as Elmo and Cookie and Grover and Big Bird, I don't know what that world looks like, because that's just not our reality. And things, I don't know. Now I feel like I'm just talking circularly, but it's frustrating because and again, I've said this since the dawn of time. People who've heard me on podcasts have heard me say this a lot, but not everything good is successful and not everything successful is good. You can have a great character and do everything right and maybe not have it be as successful as you would like it to be. And that happens. Great sitcoms get canceled, great shows get canceled, great movies flop or don't win awards. It happens. Great actors work in real estate.
Yeah.
I know way too many of them. We do what we can.
There isn't a final answer here. You were like, well, what's
Yeah.
the takeaway from this conversation? And I don't know that there is, and I don't know that there's going to be a final takeaway from, this entire bizarre podcast endeavor that I currently find myself on.
Mhm.
I'm not sure there is a final answer besides just it's interesting to ask these questions and to be prompted to ask these questions, by some silly puppet clips.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, like, going back to Abby, because I never really, and that this is not to say, like, I think Leslie is doing an amazing job with Abby, and she's the perfect person to play that character. And what has been asked of her has been nothing short of Herculean as far as the amount of the responsibility that she has with that character and the things that she does with that character and the way that character has grown far beyond, I think, what the character may have been intended to be. So that's not to say that, like, oh, it took all these years for there to be this character that was thought, and is that because of Leslie? Well, yeah, Leslie did great. But does that mean that Rosita is not a great character? No, it doesn't. Does that mean that
Of
Grangetta
course
was not a
not.
great character? No, of course not. But we live in a time when, unfortunately, because there are so few of these female characters, we find that we have to either rank them or say that, well, one succeeded because the other one failed. And it's not a situation where
Oh no,
it's got to be
of
a
course not.
win-lose.
And
No, but I think I want to make that clear in what I'm saying too, is that we get it. We fall in this trap when we talk about female characters in any situation, but especially in the Muppet world, because there are so few of them. There's so few well-known ones.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of female presence on the show. You want to talk about one-offs and anything characters. You want to talk about moms. I mean, I played Cookie's mom and Elmo's mom and Grover's mom, and that's great. That's great fun. A lot, hundreds of one-offs.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh no,
great
absolutely.
female presence on the show, but they're just not characters that anybody knows. Do you know what I mean? So it's an interesting thing to look at, as far as, are you talking about female presence, or are you talking about female merchandising, like that picture, that photograph that represents Sesame Street, and who is on that, and how many of those characters are female? And I think it's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
What is that differentiation? I always say there are a lot more female performers on Sesame Street than there are characters that represent that number. And we keep trying, and the performers do as good a job as we possibly can do with them. But there are forces bigger than us sometimes that make it so, yeah, they got to keep paring back the number, and then they'll add more, and then they'll take away, and then they'll add more, and then they'll take away. It's happened with human cast members too. I mean, we didn't even scratch the surface of human cast members.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, just as, if not more important to Sesame Street. I think the human cast, they were, to me, I knew when I was a kid, even when I was really little, that, yeah, that Grover and Cookie Monster were Muppets, but I knew that's Bob. That's the one and only Bob.
Yeah.
And when I met Bob, when I met Emilio, when I met Luis, when I met Roscoe, Gordon, and they called me by my name, they are one of a kind. There's only one Loretta Long. There's only one Sonia Manzano. There was only one Bob McGrath. You got a couple of Prairies. You got how many people have played Elmo at this point? How many people have played Ernie at this point? There's only one Bob.
Yeah.
There's only one Loretta. There's only one Allison Bartlett. So, that would be an interesting, and I know that, yes, ToughPigs is Muppet-centric, but that is also a fascinating
Oh,
conversation to be had.
absolutely, absolutely. Again, it's just you got to start somewhere, and also
Yes.
I don't know, like I keep saying, I don't I don't know what the answer is, or even all the time I don't know what the question is. I just
Right.
know that having these conversations is the best way to figure things out.
Oh, absolutely. Shining a light on the stuff is never a bad idea.
Stephanie, thank you so much for talking to me, and I'm both sorry and not sorry that this took so long. But
Oh, I it don't thank you for letting me babble.
that's what I wanted. That is 100% what I wanted when I set this up. Stephanie, do you have anything that you'd like to plug before I wrap up?
Well, season 3 of Don Quixote should be airing very soon, and
Good.
I'm particularly proud of a lot of the stuff we did this season. I wrote 3 scripts in season 3, but of course you can still see seasons 1 and 2 on PBS Kids, and I wrote. I've gotten to write a bunch of episodes of Donkey. I'm very grateful, and I love playing every character I get to play on that show. Um, yeah, if anybody wants to, Helpsters, I think, is still streaming on Apple TV Plus. And of course, Sesame Street's still going. And boy, I'm not really doing anything right now to plug per se, but I am very proud of the stuff
You
that's
should
going to be
be.
coming up this season on Donkey.
I mean, I don't know specifically what's coming up, but you should be proud of all three of those shows. I
Well, I'm just lucky to keep working. That's really that's the basic. I'm just lucky to keep working.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Becca.
Man, I love talking to Stephanie, but now I have even more to think about. But like I said, maybe that's the wonderful thing about asking questions. Sometimes the answer is less important than the journey. Next week, our journey takes us back to the world of minor characters, though, as we talk about some characters who were never really designed to be part of the main gang.
See the little house down there? That's the house where the Tootlebugs live. Isn't that cute? It's made out of a little milk carton, and it's got pencils there for the roof, and it's got a little drinking straw there. That's the chimney.
Next week on A Prairie Dawn Companion, a tale of two Tinas. I can't wait to ask even more questions then.
I really am quite remarkable.
A Prairie Dawn Companion is a production of ToughPigs.com. It is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Becca Petunia, and executive produced by the ToughPigs Muppet Fan Podcast executive producer, Joe Hennes. Thanks to Scott Hanson, Shane Keating, Tony Whitaker, and the whole Muppet Wiki team for helping me with research. The book Street Gang by Michael Davis was also indispensable. Thanks to Katilyn Miller, Michal Richardson, and Eli Lee for help with script revisions. Follow ToughPigs on social media. You can support us on Patreon or by buying a t-shirt on our TeePublic. Join the conversation on the ToughPigs Discord. You can support A Prairie Dawn Companion and lots of other podcasts too by giving Muppet Fan Podcasts with ToughPigs.com 5 stars on your podcast reviewing app of choice.
Just ask a question that starts where or when, or who, how, what, or why. Okay, you want to try it?